Japan loves propaganda, right? I mean, this is the country that sank over $1 billion trying to make itself look cool to the rest of the world. These are the guys that got memed into oblivion for giving athletes cardboard beds at the Tokyo Olympics, just so they could appear eco-friendly. There are tons of these stories out there, but today, we're here to talk about something more important. Something happening right now, right under our noses. We need to talk about how Japan is trying to brainwash its people by sneaking hidden messages into its #1 cultural export. Yep, like it or not, Japan is putting propaganda in anime. And you know what's worse? They've been doing it for decades. See, Japan first figured out how to weaponize anime all the way back in World War II, and it changed everything. It all started when the Japanese Imperial Navy had this crazy idea to commission a fully animated propaganda piece to drum up support for the military. This was arguably the first time the government used anime to try and influence public opinion. And as weird as it all sounds, it actually worked really well. Like Momotaro's Sea Eagles, a half-hour-long story about Japan's win at Pearl Harbor, blew up at the box office, attracting crowds like never before. Maybe this was the 1940s equivalent of like parents taking their kids to see Frozen or something. But instead of magical princesses, it's anthropomorphic animal soldiers. Anyway, this show rocked, right? And so the Japanese government, realizing they had a winning formula on their hands, started pumping out more of the stuff. And just like that, propaganda anime was everywhere. It ruled the media for years to come. Fast forward to today, and Japan is still churning out these kind of shows. Don't change what ain't broke, right? But instead of weird-looking raccoons jumping out of planes, the new stuff looks like this. And here's where it gets a little scary, right? With anime exploding in popularity all over the world, these shows are basically at max power, spreading Japan's propaganda far and wide to every corner of the globe. I know it sounds crazy, like, what do you mean there's propaganda in anime? I've been watching the stuff for years. I think I would have noticed. I get it. I was just as shocked as you were when I first found out, but it's there. They just got really good at hiding it. And that brings us to the question, right? What are they cooking up this time? What's the hidden message they're supposedly trying to get us to buy into in 2025? And to answer that, we gotta talk about Japan's dirty little secret. Okay, if you haven't been living under a rock for the last 10 years, you know Japan has a really embarrassing problem with their population, right? Like, people just don't want to have kids anymore. For almost half a century, the Japanese birth rate has been plummeting. And the last 5 years in particular have been the worst in history. The Prime Minister calls it the greatest crisis Japan ever faced. Smart guy Elon Musk thinks it's pretty bad too. But worst of all, if we don't fix this quick, we're gonna run out of people to make anime. This is code red. So obviously the government is cracking their heads trying to solve this problem, right? Like, they're dumping money into childcare, they're forcing people to take days off from work. Hell, they even tried organizing state-sponsored dating events. But none of it worked. Zero, zilch, nada. The birth rate is as bad as it's ever been. So at this point, they're getting desperate, trying to think up new ways to get people to want to start families again. And here's where it starts getting suspicious. While all that's happening, shows like Sakamoto Days and Spy Family are blowing up in the anime world. You know, shows that revolve around family. I'm sure you noticed, but these shows are pretty much walking ads for domestic life, right? I mean, watch enough of the stuff and you too will eventually go, "Aww, I want one." The shows usually center around a couple of badass parents and their criminally adorable kids. And sure, there's small tweaks in the formula here and there. Some shows, instead of a wife, it's 2 dads. Other times, there's no kid. But at their core, they're all spreading the same message. Get married and settle down. All the cool kids are doing it. And so, isn't it awfully convenient that these kind of shows are exploding in popularity at the height of Japan's birth crisis? Okay, so there's no real way to confirm or deny anything I'm about to tell you, so I'm just gonna give you the facts and let you form your own opinion. Sound good? 1. Japan is going through the worst population crisis in its history. 2. The government has tried everything and nothing seems to be working. They're desperate. 3. Miraculously, out of nowhere, a brand new genre of anime that's weirdly pro-family gets insanely big. And I say weirdly because for the longest time, animes didn't even have parents in them. Like, most shows, the main character's an orphan as far as I can tell. But no, 2020 rolls around and suddenly, parents are all the rage. And to top it all off, Japan's done it before, right? The Japanese government has used anime to spread propaganda in the past. And I'm not even talking about the war stuff. Like recently, the Council of Suwa, a city in the Nagano prefecture, started printing anime marriage certificates, hoping it would entice couples to want to get married. So yeah, I don't know about you, but I can't help but wonder if the government is pulling some strings behind the scenes here. The timing of it all is just way too convenient. Anyway, you're probably thinking, so what, right? I mean, so what if Prime Minister Ishiba is elo-boosting pro-family propaganda in the shape of cute anime daughters to get people to want to have kids again? So what? That sounds like a good thing, right? Especially if the shows are fun to watch, which they most definitely are. Well, it's complicated, because on one hand, we all want Japan to fix this population problem, right? But on the other, putting government propaganda in anime is exactly what got them into this mess in the first place. Yep, you heard that right. Abusing propaganda was literally what started Japan's birth rate crisis to begin with. What do I mean? Okay, so remember when we were talking about World War II? Well, as you'll remember from history class, Japan lost that war. Bad. And so in 1946, the country was in shambles. They didn't have enough food, millions were left homeless, and every week there would be some random new disease breaking out because people didn't even have water to wash their damn hands. So the Japanese government had to lock in, right? They realized that no one was coming to save them, and the only way Japan was ever gonna recover was by pulling themselves up by their bootstraps and grinding like their lives depended on it. And one of the ways they got the Japanese people on board with this plan was, you guessed it, propaganda. From 1946 well into the 2000s, Japan pushed the work until you die mindset everywhere in its media, especially in anime. They were pretty smart about it though. They didn't shove it down your throats. They did it with a light touch. Look at Astro Boy, for example. On the surface, it's a fun show about a robot superhero that saves the world from evil. But also, the main character is literally an android that works 24/7. He never rests, he's married to his job, and despite all that, he never complains. He's the perfect worker. In Ashita no Joe, Joe is a man possessed, letting his passion for boxing, his craft, consume his entire life. In other words, he's a workaholic. And there are so many of these, right? Shows that glorify grinding till your bones turn to dust. Actually, thinking about it now, this probably explains why you never see parents in anime. Cause they're meant to be out working. Anyway, Japan's propaganda plan worked. In fact, it worked so well that in just a single generation, the country went from eating dirt to becoming the third biggest economy in the world. Wikipedia calls it an economic miracle. Only problem was, people were so focused on work now, they forgot how to reproduce. And that, my dudes, was the start of Japan's population crisis. Pretty ironic, right? Propaganda created the problem in the first place, and now they want to use propaganda to try and fix it too? I wonder how that's gonna play out. But there's also another possibility, right? What if our family-themed animes aren't actually a part of the Japanese government's plan to mind control its people again? What if they're a cry for help? The side effects of Japan's toxic work culture has been pretty bad for the country, sure. But it was even worse for its people. So there's this term, karoshi in Japanese, which translates to death by overworking. And every year there's like thousands of people who end up succumbing to this fate. There was this one woman who had a heart attack after working 159 hours of overtime a month. 159? Let's put that into perspective. This woman was working 15.5 hours a day, Monday to Friday, for years. And if cardiovascular disease doesn't get you, depression might. Many companies have nap cafes, so employees don't have to waste precious time going home to sleep. They can just take a 4-hour nap at the office and get right back to work the next day. But don't worry if this sounds stressful, there are also dedicated crying rooms for you to use when things get too intense. Insane, right? So it would make sense that after half a century of this crazy obsession with work, the Japanese people are now burnt out and craving something different. And that's where our family animes come in. They're showing people an alternative, giving them a different perspective of what their lives could be, showing them that it doesn't have to be all about work and that it's okay to want something more. Maybe that's why these shows are so popular. Maybe they're more than just state-sponsored propaganda. Maybe these shows are a sign that Japan is now ready to move on from the toxic work culture that plagued it for the last 50 years, that the wounds from World War II are finally healing. We'll never know for sure. But the good news is, it's working! Japan's birth rate in the last couple of years has actually stabilized, and maybe it's thanks to the country's increasingly generous childcare policies, or maybe the government dating programs are finally taking off. Or maybe, just maybe, it's thanks to our cute little family animes. It's crazy how the stuff we watch can change how we see the world, right? Really makes you wonder what shows like Redo of Healer are trying to do to us. If you're curious, I got a video on that too. It got demonetized though, so I might delete it at some point. Check it out if you like. While it's still up. Subscribe.